Our theme this morning is acceptance. What's it like growing up in a religious family and having to tell them you're gay? Here to share his personal experience is Jason Cianciotto. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Timberly.
Your mother said it might have been easier to deal with your death than you being gay. How do you respond to such a powerful statement like that from your own mother?
It was a really difficult thing to hear, and it was at where the turmoil that my family and I were experiencing over this was at its lowest point. Obviously, my mother, no mother, would ever wish that upon her son, but I think it speaks to the depth at which the pain that my family was feeling and the difficulty they were experiencing because of the messages they were hearing about what it meant to have a gay son from their church and from society.
So when did you come out to your family?
I didn't come out actually until I was 19 years old, but there was a long journey to get to that point. And actually it was 13 years old. I was 13 years old when my parents first came to understand that that I was becoming sexually active, and that's something difficult for all parents to deal with.
But no matter what.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. But the fact that their son was interacting with people of the same sex was extremely hard for them. And on the recommendation of our church, they brought me to a Christian lay counselor. And the experience going there a couple of times a week for a number of months taught me that this was something about myself that was worse than anything possible that I could do. This was something that I needed to run away from, that I needed to hide from, and then if I just said the right thing and I did the right thing, people would stop asking me these embarrassing questions and I could just be a kid again. And so the experience at 13 going to therapy for the first time pushed me way into the back of the closet. And I was able to pretend that this didn't exist for me, that it didn't exist in my family until it became an issue again when I was 16, and I again was forced to go to therapy.
And in college, did you feel at that point that maybe there was a little more freedom there, and then being, and I don't know if you were at home with your parents when you were going to college?
In the beginning I was. I started going to a community college, and I had heard or saw a poster or something that the school had a gay and lesbian student group, and I thought long and hard about whether or not I should go, and I just remember physically shaking before I walked into the room for the first time, and instead of meeting these people who were you know, awful people that I had been told gay and lesbian people were, this tremendous amount of peace came over me, and because the first time I was communing with, I was talking with, I was laughing with people who had similar experiences, and it helped me to feel not so alone, and helped me to realize that the images that I had been told by the people from our church, by my own family, simply weren't true.
And here you were for one of the first times in your life being accepted for who you really were,
yes.
really are.
Now, they may have accepted me, but it took me a while to learn to accept myself. And that actually didn't happen until my parents kicked me out of the house. I had come home from work one day and found all of my belongings in black plastic bags on the front porch. And, you know, in their view, they had been working on this with me for years, and that they felt that they finally needed to protect the rest of the family from me. And that the way to do that was to sort of cut me off, and if I was going to go my own sinful ways, then that was my own choice, but it would be, you know, outside of within the family.
And they stopped talking to you for about 3 years.
They did. And after they kicked me out, I moved cross-country to live with my biological father and my family there, who was more accepting, though at the time I wasn't still accepting that I was gay. But shortly after moving there, I walked by the community center in Tucson where I was and saw that they had a youth group there, and I started going there, and it wasn't too much further after that that I came out to my father and his wife and my siblings there, who were very accepting. But unfortunately, when I called my parents and told them who I was and that I had learned to accept this in myself, they weren't able to accept it, and they didn't speak to me for about 3 years.
So that whole period when you moved in with your biological father was really a turning point for you.
It absolutely was. It was a journey of healing, because not only was I hiding from myself when I was a young teenager in therapy, I was also hiding from the trauma that it had caused me mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I had become a fragmented person. I wasn't a whole person.
Now you work with the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force. Tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that and what do you do there?
Sure. Well, the task force is the oldest equal rights organization for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. And I specifically work for our Policy Institute, which is a think tank that does research and strategy development to help achieve full equality.
How are things with your mom now?
Well, we've reconnected with each other for a number of years now. And while I'm glad that we have that relationship, unfortunately, we really aren't able to talk about much of substance. I can't talk to her about my work. I can't talk to her about the political or social things that are important to me. And another great example is that my current partner and I are going to be married in June, and they're not going to come to our wedding ceremony. And so there's this constant reminder of this distance, this space between us. And it's so sad to me that this religion and faith that they're a part of, which in their view is about creating strong families, has actually split our family apart.
So how do you feel about them now? I mean, knowing that they're probably not going to change.
I think part of my own process of acceptance was learning how to accept them, because I had to learn to forgive them for what they did. And that process for me was understanding why it is that they adhere to such a strong, legalistic, everything is black and white faith to the extent that they would choose it over their own son, in my opinion. And through learning about my parents' history and background, I saw the important role that that sense of absolutism and sense of faith plays for them. And I know that if they didn't have that, they would lose something very important in their lives, and I would never want to take that away from them. I would never want them to be unhappy or experience that uncomfortableness. And so, do I wish it would change? I wish they would come to my wedding and fully embrace me and my partner?
Yeah.
Yes. But if that never happens, I've learned to accept it in that.
Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your experience and your story.
Thank you.
For more information on Jason's work, go to our New Morning website at faithstreams.org.